The Amerks, Matthew Savoy, the captaincy, and more coming up on Locked On Sabres.
You're Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thanks for making Locked On Sabres your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, and we are free on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. At Sneaky Joe Sports to follow me on Twitter. At Locked On Sabres to follow the podcast account. And of course, check out our YouTube channel. The best way to like and subscribe us, and also to get a comment or a question in. Last show about Tyson Jost, Victor Olofsson, a lot of the same. A lot of disagreement with me about Tyson Jost departing. I think Tyson Jost should be somebody that is removed from this Sabres equation. And Dylan, Nick, Joey, Jake, lots and lots of fans and listeners that did not agree that Jost is a good player and they should keep him around bottom six. And I get that sentiment. But if you want to hear my reasoning for why Tyson Jost should be someone the Sabres try to upgrade from, be sure to check out our last episode. Today on the show, exit interview series, we are going to round out the rest of the forwards. Almost. Next show will be a bridge from the rest of the forwards to the defensemen. But today, two veterans that are upcoming free agents. Time to get them in now. We got just over a month until they hit free agency. Kyle Okposo and Zemgus Girgensons. What are the futures for those two players? What are they at this stage in their careers? And if Okposo goes, who's the captain? All that on the table coming up in a little bit here on Locked On Sabres. But we do have to start with the Amerks. The Amerks are playing tonight, Tuesday night, beginning of the Eastern Conference Finals in the AHL. 7:05 puck drop in Hershey, Pennsylvania, against the Hershey Bears, the affiliate of the Washington Capitals. That game will be televised on MSG, which is awesome for Sabre fans, especially for a road game. I'm not sure that they'll do the same. They're doing it for games 1 and 2 in Hershey. I'm not sure if they're doing it for 3 and 4 in Rochester. They might not. Try to entice Sabre fans, make the hour and a half drive. I might try to do that. Drive up to Rochester, see a playoff game, especially with the emergence, potentially, of Matthew Savoy, the top 10 pick of the Sabres in the 2022 NHL draft, recently of the Winnipeg Ice, dominated the WHL playoffs. He's arrived in Roch, so he's practicing with the Amerks. He will not play game one. But Seth Appert, the Amerks head coach, did say, when asked about whether Savoy would factor into the lineup, that he's here to play. We're not just bringing him here to practice. Now, they are doing that with a couple other prospects that are there, so it was a worthy question. But he said definitively, Savoy's going to play. He's not going to play game one. That could be interesting about when you put in Savoy. If this group is working and they win game one and they stay hot, I mean, they've won, how many games in a row here? 6. Savoy going in, there's some argument out there for keep the group together. Don't mess with something that's working. I would want to say, though, if Matthew Savoy is a dominant player, like he's looked like in the junior playoffs, and he could score goals for you, and you put him in, you find a spot for him, and you take, no disrespect to the Amerks, there's got to be somebody in that lineup that is not as good as Matthew Savoy is right now as a top 10 pick. So I'd like to see Savoy factor into the lineup for game 3. Game 3 in Rochester. Give everybody a look at him. Give Sabre fans another reason to make the drive down and make that a sellout. I would want to see Savoy in Rochester especially. But when he gets in, he'll make these games even more interesting. Just another guy to look for with Yuri Kulik and, of course, Isaac Rosen as well. Game 3, by the way, it will be Saturday night in Rochester. That's a 7:05 puck drop. Then game 4 in Rochester. I would bet Savoy's in by then. I can't imagine they would hold him out till later in the series and then put him in. So I think Savoy will play, and I would guess game 3 would be my guess for when he goes in. But game 1 Tuesday, game 2 Thursday. We'll talk lots about game 1 on our next show. So we'll dive more and more into the Amerks as these games go on, especially the ones that are on TV, because I'm not going all the way to Hershey to watch these games. So game one, going to be watching it in full, and I would recommend you do too. Get some good playoff hockey in for the Amerks. So Amerks tonight. We'll get to Zemgus Girgensons. We'll get to Kyle Okposo when we come back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast with Joe DiBiase. And we are brought to you by Game Time. Amerks tickets, hey, for Saturday night, check them out. Buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. Or, hey, if you want to make a drive, I just went to the Taylor Swift concert in Boston. If you want to go check her out in a different city, whether that's Pittsburgh or whatnot, it's drivable, right? Go check out the tickets on the Game Time app. Forget planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Get exclusive flash deals on tickets for everything: football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. And the Game Time guarantee means you'll get the best price guaranteed. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time is going to credit you 110% of the difference. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNHL. You'll get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Sneaky Joe DiBiase back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Time for a couple more exit interviews as we are getting to the end here of our forwards. And, of course, that's the biggest chunk. We've got only a couple goalies to get to and a couple of defensemen. Today, veterans, Zemgus Girgensons and Kyle Okposo. We'll start with Zemgus Girgensons. He will be a free agent. And this is the longest tenured Buffalo Sabre. He has been on the team since Henrik Tallinder was on this team. Second stint, Henrik Tallinder. I'm cheating a little bit, but this would be year 10 if the Sabres bring Girgensons back on a new contract. Now, a couple of things on Girgensons. What Adams has said about him, what role would be available to him, and money. All of it. But first, what is he as a player at this stage in his career? I mean, he's still not old. He's not out of his prime. He's 29 years old. It's amazing, right, that he's still in his 20s. But Girgensons is still in his 20s. The once future captain, still in his 20s. He gives you speed on the bottom line, scoring once in a while. He's had double-digit goals in 3 consecutive seasons. 10 goals this past year, only 8 assists. He's never been a big assist guy. He's only got 93 assists in 625 games played. 8 assists last year, 8 the year before that, 7 the year before that. He's not a playmaker, but he'll chip in the odd goal here and there. He'll create some shots for himself while not doing it great for others, but defensive responsibility as well. He's one of the few Sabres that is trustworthy in his own end, and I think a pretty darn good penalty killer. Again, kind of a rare thing on this team. I think he's a better penalty killer and a better defensive player than Kyle Okposo is. So between speed, defensive prowess, I think there is an argument to be made if you were going to pin one against the other. Hey, I've only got room for one of these guys. Who am I bringing back? The arguments for Girgensons are defense and speed. He gives you that in your bottom 6. Now, one thing that might not go his way in an argument like this is the contract. Is he going to be okay signing a 1-year deal? He's just coming off a 3-year deal that, I don't know, I feel like he could get somewhere else. I think he could get a 3-year deal somewhere else. Maybe not on a great team, or maybe on a great team. Maybe Tampa or Toronto, one of these teams that likes to bring in guys like him to play in their bottom line, speed and, those role-playing roles. Put him with Pat Maroon in Tampa Bay. And that's the type of team that would worry me about, even if the Sabres want to bring Zemgus back. Can they? This guy's been here for 10 years. Now, maybe he's now finally seeing the light at the end of the tunnel like we all are, that the team's going to get good. But does he want to take that risk? If there's a great team out there, if Boston's calling, if Vegas is calling, if Tampa is calling, and he could go to a Stanley Cup contender, how could you blame him? He's given this team 10 years. He just signed a 3-year contract recently when he had every reason to want to get out of here. So I wouldn't begrudge Zemgus for leaving, and I would not want the Sabres to get into any sort of bidding war for him. Not my least favorite idea, though, bringing him back. But to me, it's down to him or Okposo. And Zemgus wears an A, not as vocal of a leader. And that might matter too. Now, Adams, if I'm taking my cues from Kevin Adams, and I'm guessing at what he was kind of implying at his end of season press conference, he sounded to me less willing to want to bring Zemgus back. Not willing. He did say, hey, we'd like to have him back. Like that type of verbiage, that they'll talk with his agent. We'll see what works. But didn't sound overly aggressive about the idea of re-signing Zemgus for this team's bottom line. So we'll see. I might want to guess right now that he's gone, that he has played his final game for the Buffalo Sabres. That would be my guess, but he's a very interesting one going into July 1st, as he does need a contract. And 9 years with the Sabres, 625 games. He's played, I think he's the third most games played in NHL history without a playoff game. Jeff Skinner is number one. So we'll see what happens with Zemgus. What about his line mate, his partner in crime over the past couple of years? What about Kyle Okposo? Is he back? What happens at the captaincy? How did Adams sound about him at the end of the year? I got some advanced stats on Okposo that might actually go the other way. I'll get to it. I thought Okposo might have been shot. There's at least one number that might point to that not being true. We'll get to that when we return here on the Locked On Sabres podcast with Joe DiBiase. We're brought to you by Bird Dogs. As a big golfer, and I'm obsessed with golf joggers now. I don't want to wear anything else. We went to Taylor Swift in Boston, and I had jeans packed. I had khaki shorts packed. Like, nope, I want to wear my golf joggers. I want to wear my khaki golf joggers, and I'll figure out the rest after that. And Bird Dogs has the best golf joggers. And not just golf joggers, but sweatpants, super comfortable, shorts, polos as well. The names, by the way, on the joggers: Tiger Woods, but it's spelled Woulds, Gabe Ruths, and Wayne Regretskis. They got some creative names, some creative athlete names for their joggers. Check them out, birddogs.com. And again, it's not just golf joggers, it's sweatpants, it's shorts, it's polo shirts. They got everything that you might be looking for to dress for success. I look better. I feel great wearing Bird Dogs. It was in the 70s when I left, and the pants are thin enough to where it feels like you're never going to be hot wearing them, but when it gets a little bit cooler later in the day, it was probably in the low 60s when we were at the show, and man, I was glad I was not wearing shorts. So go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL, and when you enter the promo code LockedOnNHL, they'll throw in a free custom Bird Dogs Yeti-style tumbler with every order. Again, go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL and enter the promo code LockedOnNHL. All right, final segment here on the Locked On Sabres podcast on an Amerks playoff game day. Kyle Okposo, next up in our exit interview series. Kyle Okposo is finally through that contract. A 6-year deal that has had its ups and downs. 7-year deal, I should say. A 7-year deal that's had its ups and downs. How did it start? Well, Tim Murray signs him. Remember, you give Kyle Okposo credit for this. The Steven Stamkos free agency class. Stamkos signed in Tampa before ever hitting the market. So after Stamkos signed, this was the guy. He was the number one free agent. He's the guy that chose to come to Buffalo. There are very few top free agents in sports history that choose Buffalo. Mario Williams is one with the Bills, right? Kyle Okposo is another. I'm not even sure there is another name. The number one guy on the market went to Buffalo. That was Kyle Okposo. He wanted to be here. And he has been as committed as anyone ever. And that contract, again, has had kind of a wild ride, at least from a fan standpoint. How did it start off? Well, pretty okay. He scored 19 goals in 65 games in year one. He had 45 points. Not great. You'd be hoping for a little bit more. He was an all-star alternate. You were more disappointed with the rest of the team than him. Then the next year, 44 points, 15 goals. And I think that's when we started scratching our heads like, I thought this was going to be more than this. He's playing with O'Reilly at the time. Remember, a lot of minutes with Ryan O'Reilly. And we thought, okay, I thought this was going to be more. Then he hit the cliff. Year 3 of the contract, 30 years old, 29 points. Uh-oh. We got an anchor on our hands. Then 19 points. Oh, he's unplayable. And then 13 points in 35 games. 2 goals under Ralph Krueger, and it's just mercifully end this. I mean, he was trying hard. He was a good character guy. He was well-liked in the room. So he had all that going for him. But the on-us production was just abysmal. Then Don Granato shows up. And he's a little further down the list. Salvage projects for Don Granato. Don Granato comes in after a 13-point season, a 19-point season, a 29-point season. And what does Kyle Okposo do under Don Granato in his first year, full season as a head coach? At 33 years old, year 6 of a 7-year contract that everybody at that point hates. His first 20-goal season for the Buffalo Sabres and 45 points, matching his high with the team. That was last season, 21-22. He was back. He was scoring on the power play. He was playing in the middle six. He was really the de facto captain with Jack Eichel being traded. A leader in the room. He was everything you could have asked for. And then last year, a bit of a step back. But maybe a lot of that was usage. To my eyes, Okposo looked like the wheels had fallen off. He looked like he just couldn't keep up pace-wise anymore. And to whether or not that's true, maybe it's not as true as maybe my eyes were deceiving me a little bit. Because the expected goals for number for him actually wasn't bad, 50%, which was higher than it was the year prior. Well, what are some differences? Power play usage, as I mentioned. He had 8 power play goals and 6 power play assists. 14 power play points last year. This past year, only 1 power play goal and 3 power play assists. His usage went way down. Now, it's not just, he was used less on the power play. That's why the numbers went away. It was a little bit of 5-on-5 also. He went down from 29 5-on-5 points to 23 5-on-5 points. That might not sound like a big drop, but that's a 20% drop. So the wheels, I think, are starting to fall off. The speed is not there. His ability to create for himself has basically gone away. He'll give you a moment every other week with that. He's a hard worker. He's a responsible player, but he's also not the penalty killer you'd want. So on ice-wise, I'm worried. I don't know that there's a lot in there. There's a lot left in there for Kyle Okposo after an 11-goal season. So for me, I think it's time to move on. Will he? Will they move on? The reason why I think he's more likely to stay than Zemgus Girgensons is what he means to that room. And if he could show them, if he showed them enough that, hey, I could still be on your bottom line. I could play 12 minutes a night, 13 minutes a night. And I think he kind of did that. He at least did that. Even though I might be projecting that next year we're not going to feel the same. I think what he means to the room, what he is as a leader, the players call him dad for a reason. I think he's the guy they bring back, is my guess. On a 1-year deal, the vet minimum, a send-off, he remains the captain. That would be my prediction for what happens with Kyle Okposo. Now, if I'm wrong, and he's the guy that goes, or maybe both he and Zemgus go, what happens to the captaincy? And that's another one I feel very strongly about. I think it's going to be Rasmus Dahlin. I think this team is going to be turned over to Rasmus Dahlin when Kyle Okposo is no longer the captain. Hey, maybe Okposo's back and they still want to turn it over to Dahlin. Help, have Okposo in there as he kind of transitions. That could be an idea. Dahlin became more vocal. Dahlin became more fiery on the ice, leader by example. I mean, his play has now reached the level that you would want for him. It's his team. He's the face of the franchise. Turn it over to him. Make him the captain. I love when a European guy gets the captaincy too, because I feel like there's a negative stigma that goes to Europeans when it comes to leadership qualities. That's why they never get captaincies in the NHL ever. So I would love to see Dahlin be the captain. And that's my guess as to what would happen. It could be Alex Tuch. He would be a candidate here. Dylan Cousins, maybe a little too early for him, but he could be a candidate. My guess would be Dahlin, though. If Okposo leaves, which again, if I'm just playing the guessing game here over and over, I'm going to think Okposo stays one more year, then it goes to Dahlin. But again, July 1st to wait to see if Okposo should be back. I'll put a poll up on our Twitter account at Locked On Sabres. If only one could stay, who's the one? Okposo or Girgensons? Vote at Locked On Sabres. Watch Amerks and Bears on Tuesday night, 7 o'clock. Should be a good one. Get a look at Yuri Kulich for the first time if you haven't seen him live yet, at least live on TV. Isaac Rosen and more. Check them out. MSG, again, 7 o'clock on Tuesday for that. And we'll talk to you next time. We'll start talking more about the defensive group, and we will recap Amerks and Bears as the Amerks make their run at the Calder Cup. They are now in the Eastern Conference Finals. Thanks for listening to Locked On Sabres. And again, next time, Amerks Greenway, and defenseman. Coming up next time on the Locked On Sabres podcast with Joe DiBiase.